Wherever I go, it always seems like there are different opinions regarding the Harry Potter movies. I might have liked the film that someone else might have a completely different experience to. But there is one Harry Potter film that I think most fans can agree is one of the best. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. It's just got such a good written story and is also a rare masterpiece by the way it is filmed and adapted to the big screen. So today I'm going to break down and review this movie and why a lot of people think it's the best in the series. So let's start off with the storyline. The film follows Harry's third year at Hogwarts and we find out that someone has broken out of Azkaban and is going after Harry to try and kill him. This movie has so many mysteries and twists in it that are just shocking and unexpected, and immediately you can tell that the story has got a much darker theme to it, but it still feels magical and does a good job of balancing humour and darker themes. Things like Quidditch, which in the previous two films was bright and colourful, was now dark, which suited perfectly for this film. Another thing that I'd like to add is the Dementors. The Dementors were visioned perfectly and gave a sense that there was something to be feared. They were a big part of this film and were how I personally pictured them in the books. But not this whole movie was dark. Things like Aunt Marge blowing up and flying away and the night bus were done so it was both funny and comedic but also serious and impacting the story at the same time. It's good how they were able to have these light-hearted moments in the film but also keep it dark, because a mature and young audience is their key demographic. They managed to highlight and include big things from the book when adapting it to the big screen. All of the big reveals and twists were done really well and were some of the best in the series, to be honest. They do have a little bit of backstory in the film, like the Potter's murder, but I think it would have been good if they did include other bits of backstory, like the Marauders. They are such a big part of the book, and I don't think it was even mentioned once in the movie that Harry's father, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew were the ones who made the map, because these characters have big impacts on the story, and I think it would have just added to the already amazing big reveals in this movie. But this film is also very interesting because it's the one that has very little to do with Voldemort. I think Voldemort was mentioned maybe once by name and a few other times by you-know-who, but it makes this movie a little unnecessary, but it's still one of the best in the series, I can't argue with that, but it doesn't have this big impact on the story because Voldemort's not in it. It does set up a lot of important things like Sirius and Wormtail, who Wormtail brings Voldemort back to life, so it does a good job of setting up those things, but with Voldemort not in it, it just makes it a bit different to the rest of the movies. Now I'm going to move on to the characters and acting. The character development in this film was done extremely well. In this movie, we finally get to see Harry become a good wizard, and by that I mean a good spellcaster. He has to learn how to defend himself against Dementors and learn his own fears. This is an interesting storyline for him, because it comes into play in the rest of the series, especially in the Order of the Phoenix, where he teaches others to defend themselves against the dark arts when Voldemort comes back to life. When rewatching this movie in preparation for this video, I noticed something that I haven't noticed before. This movie focuses a lot on Harry and not as much on Ron and Hermione. I believe this is the case is because Harry is growing up and becoming a teenager, and he feels more isolated from his friends. We can see this come into play when all of his classmates are going off to Hogsmeade and he has to stay behind, and also when the Dementors are affecting him the most. We can see that he feels alone. And Daniel Radcliffe really brought his A-game to his performance in this one. You can tell that his acting has improved massively, which is good so he can carry the story and deliver those important scenes, and he does a good job of that. In fact, all of the child actors' acting improved. You can see that they're getting older and more mature. And you can also see that they start to wear more plain clothes around the Hogwarts grounds. This is to reflect their character and personality, and when they're walking around in their robes, director Alfonso Cuarón let them wear their robes however they wanted to reflect their character even more. Even the supporting adult cast did an outstanding job, most notably the new characters who were portrayed really well. And for this movie, they also had to recast a character. Dumbledore, who in the last two movies was played by Richard Harris, had to be recast because Richard Harris passed away, so Michael Gambon had to take over to play Dumbledore. And I don't mind his performance in this movie. It does get better over time, but he still does do a good job. And overall, I think all of the acting in this movie was great, and the characters were presented really nicely, and each actor did a fantastic job. But now onto the most impressive part of the whole movie, which is the cinematography. As I said before, the film was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and this is his first and only movie that he's directed in the series. He took over from Chris Columbus, who directed the first two films, and Chris had set up this world and gave it a magical feel, and Alfonso took over and gave it a more darker feel, which I think was fitting, and this did continue throughout the series. Like at the end of some of the scenes, they would darken it out before the next scene started, which was very effective, and a way that they achieved this was by the way the film was shot. This film was shot very well, and is one of the reasons why it still feels magical. The way that they did a lot of the scenes with a long shot is very effective, and it looks nice, and it's not as choppy as some of the others. He also did another clever thing, which was how he showed the year go by. He did this by showing the Hogwarts grounds over time, and to get the impression that time had gone by, so the pacing was not off. And he did this really well. I mean, who knew watching a bird fly over the Hogwarts grounds would be so entertaining? And speaking of Hogwarts, Hogwarts Castle in this movie looks very nice and beautiful. When Harry is flying on Buckbeak, we get to see a good view of Hogwarts and all of the grounds, like the lake and the forest. They also went to Scotland to film a few more scenes of the Hogwarts ground and Hagrid's hut. And even though there might be a few continuity errors from how the grounds look and Hogwarts from the first two films, it still looks amazing and probably even better. And I mean, I know that most of the filming was done very well, but there is just one shot in this movie that is just very, very cringy, and I'm sure you know the scene I'm talking about. Yeah, it was probably not the best way to end a film, but apart from that, the cinematography in this film is definitely a standout. And I'm not going to go into this today because I'm sure there are a lot of videos about this, but there are so many hidden elements to this film that have a proper meaning inside of them, and why it was filmed in that particular way. The way that they did it was done so well, and I can see why it's a lot of people's favourite movie in the Harry Potter series, because it has an amazing written story with incredible characters and acting, and by the way it was filmed and edited, I can see why it is a lot of people's favourite Harry Potter movie, and it is truly a standout. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more Harry Potter content like this. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next Friday.